Gaia was just 19 years old from the small seaside town of Swanage in Dorset, England. In November 2017, she disappeared. And for 11 days, her family and the entire community searched desperately for her. It was a case that shook the UK, not just because of the mystery around her disappearance, but because of the questions it raised about how police handle missing person reports, especially when mental health is involved. Gaia was a bright, caring 19-year-old college student. She had two sisters, a twin, Maya, and an older sister, Clara. She had dreams, friends who adored her, and a close-knit family. But she was also going through an incredibly difficult time. She has been diagnosed with epilepsy and also dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder after an alleged sexual assault. The court case surrounding that situation had collapsed, which, according to her family, left her feeling isolated, frustrated, and scared. Her loved ones described her as a beautiful inside and out, but also as someone who could be deeply anxious and vulnerable. Gaia had epilepsy, and managing it wasn't always easy, especially under stress. In the weeks before she went missing, her mental health had been very fragile. She had been staying between her own home and friends' places, just trying to find some stability. And before we get into Gaia's disappearance, I want to go back a few years to when she was 16. That's when her life was turned upside down by a man named Connor, who at the time was already 22 years old. Gaia met him online and eventually they met in person. They saw each other twice, but during their second meeting, she was allegedly drugged and raped. Connor also allegedly threatened to kill her and her family if she ever told anyone. But she eventually did tell her family. It happened during a mental health crisis and she ended up being admitted to hospital. Despite that, it seems neither some of the healthcare professionals nor the police truly believed her. Some of her medical records even described her account as delusions of sexual assault. Not long after, Connor was charged with offenses unrelated to Gaia's case, but still relevant. Some of those involved minors, just as Gaia, but this didn't change anything for her case. And to make matters even worse, her support from the community mental health services for adolescents, as well as from Dorset Sexual Trauma and Recovery Services, ended. She was left by herself. Her family kept pushing the police to investigate, but in the end, the case was dropped due to what police said was lack of evidence. Connor eventually pleaded guilty to those other charges, but somehow he was still able to use Facebook. He repeatedly sent Gaia friend requests, and when she reported this to the police and asked for a restraining order, her request was just point blank refused. And if you're already frustrated, it gets worse. While staying in a mental health hospital, Gaia was sexually harassed by another patient. She reported it, but again, nothing was done. And shortly after that, she was discharged, labeled as low risk, with no safeguarding referrals or ongoing support in place. And once again, she was left to her own devices. By October 2017, Gaia's health was declining. The constant stress and anxiety were making her epilepsy worse, which then caused more stress, a completely vicious cycle. She suffered another mental health crisis and was assessed in a hospital, but once again, she was considered low risk. And again, not much was done. Then in November 2017, a man sent her sexually explicit images on Facebook. According to Gaia's sister, this triggered memories of her previous assault in 2014. So now we are back on the main timeline. On the 7th of November 2017, Gaia was in Swanage. That day was already a big one for her. She was supposed to go to the police station to talk about a man who sent her those explicit images. She also had a GP appointment booked for 5 p.m. She was hoping to get a referral to community mental health services to get proper help again. And the stress of that day was getting to her. Earlier that day, both Gaia and her family had been trying to get help from the police and health services. She was in extreme distress, and they actually made some of those phone calls available publicly, so we can listen to some of it right now.
Hello, it's Control story. Are you free to speak?
Yes, yeah.
Lovely. I've got a Talia Pope on the line.
Okay.
She's calling in regards to, is it her niece Gaia? Is that right?
Yeah, this is the fourth time I spoke to her today. I have no idea what she's on about. I put her through. I'll try and help again.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
Cheers.
And it's quite distressing to have to keep repeating this, and she's so distressed. My niece is a rape survivor. She's got more information she needs to relate, but it's as important to her mental health, you see, that she can come in and do this today.
At one point, she even called for an ambulance during one of her breakdowns, but instead they didn't send one at all. There was just a clinician who phoned her mum back later on.
She's gone into a relapse. She has a mental health issue at the moment because it's triggered her because she had post-traumatic stress disorder from a previous attack. But it's been devastating, the impact of her receiving these images. But it's enough to push her over the edge.
In the afternoon, Gaia was at her aunt Talia's house in Swanage. Her aunt said she seemed very unsettled. Around 3:40, Gaia called her twin sister, then suddenly just ran out of the house. 2 minutes later, at 3:42, her aunt called Dorset police, telling them she was worried and that Gaia was having some sort of episode. But because the call got linked to the earlier incident about the explicit images, police didn't treat it as a new missing person report. That meant there was no risk assessment and no officers sent out. Her aunt called them again at 4:24 p.m., this time formally reporting her missing.
You know, she needs help. I was hoping that we were going to get to this appointment, right. And now she's run off. I can't find her.
Just before 4 p.m., CCTV caught what would be the last confirmed sighting of Gaia alive. After she turned up at the house of Rosemary Dinch, who was the grandmother of her friend Nathan. Rosemary later said Gaia was very upset, even sliding down to the floor at one point. She hugged her and she noticed Gaia was really hot and sweaty. She even started taking her clothes off. Mrs. Dinch managed to get her to put her clothes back on, and moments later Gaia left. More like she ran out without her coat, looking completely panicked. In the meantime, Gaia's twin sister, her parents and friends began posting online, sharing her photo, asking the public to keep an eye out. The search quickly grew massive. Volunteers combed through cliffs, fields, woodland, and the coastline. Local businesses put up posters. Hashtags like Find Gaia began trending. One searcher later said it was like the whole town had turned into detectives overnight. Helicopters with heat cameras were brought in. Sniffer dogs searched fields. Police went door to door. And yet, as the days passed, there was still no sign of Gaia. A few days later, on the 13th of November, things took a dramatic turn. Gaia's friend's grandmother, Rosemary Dinch, the last confirmed person to see her alive, and her 19-year-old grandson, Nathan, were both arrested on a suspicion of murder. From what I could find, it's not entirely clear what led police to that step, other than the fact that Gaia had been at Rosemary's house shortly before she disappeared, and some of her clothes, at least her jacket, were left at the house. Nathan, from what I understand, wasn't even living there. He wasn't there at the time, so not sure what was his connection exactly, but both of them were released the very next day with no charges. Then on 16th of November, a member of the public came across some of Gaia's clothes and one of her shoes. This was the same area search teams had already been through, so it did raise a lot of questions. And later that same day, police arrested a 49-year-old man on suspicion of murder. They didn't name him publicly at first, only saying he was someone known to Gaia, but his identity very quickly came out when his own father spoke to the press. It turned out it's Rosemary's Dinch's son and Nathan's uncle. Just like the others, though, he was released after about a day. Finally, on the 18th of November, specialist search teams found a body. It was hidden in thick undergrowth near a coastal path close to Dancing Ledge. It was a popular cliffside area about a mile from where Gaia was last seen, and it was in the same general spot where her clothes had been found 2 days earlier. It was shocking to many that she hadn't been found sooner, especially considering the area had already been searched with helicopters and police dogs. Her family's worst fears were confirmed. Friends described the moment as a nightmare you cannot wake up from. And then came another surprise. Police announced there were no signs of foul play. The post-mortem concluded that Gaia died from hypothermia. The official version is that Gaia, in a state of severe mental distress, wandered out along the cliffs, became disoriented, and died from exposure. But her family questioned whether more could have been done.
Felt like they didn't take the danger to her life seriously enough until it was too late to save her. And if that's true, that's not just a question of our private grief, that's a matter of public concern.
They argued police should have treated her disappearance as high risk immediately, given her health conditions and the known vulnerability. She had no medication with her for her epilepsy. Even a simple seizure could be fatal, especially in the cold conditions outside. Of course, there were also many people wondering if maybe someone had been following her. Maybe she was trying to get away from someone that day. There was no evidence ever that would prove foul play, but as in many similar cases, those questions haven't gone away. In 2022, an inquest into Gaia's death finally took place. The official conclusion, though, was still the same. She died from hypothermia. But the proceedings also exposed some deeply troubling details. For starters, there were delays in the very first stages of the police search. One of the surgeons on the case didn't even pass the crucial information at the end of his shift. His excuse, he'd only ever filled in as acting surgeon on a handful of occasions before and didn't have proper training or experience. How could that happen? That shouldn't have happened. Then there was the call handler who took the call from Gaia's aunt. They weren't trained in dealing with one-on-one calls and had no training in handling missing person incidents. That alone could have changed everything.
I've asked control not to put any more calls through to me because I think they're taking the to be honest. But if they're there, put them through and I'll see if I can get some more sense out of them.
And on top of that, Gaia's case was graded as medium risk instead of high, which meant way less urgency and fewer resources in those critical early hours. And these were just some of the issues. There were failures both before and after she disappeared that paint a picture of a system that simply did not respond as it should have. Her family said they felt let down, that if resources had been mobilized faster, maybe the outcome could have been different. The case sparked discussions about how missing persons cases involving mental health are handled in the UK. Campaigns have since pushed for better training for officers and faster classification of vulnerable cases. But of course, we all know how slowly those things change, if at all. Gaia's Pope story is heartbreaking and is just one of many. I think cases like this remind us that mental health crises are real emergencies. They need urgent response, just like any other life-threatening situation. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. And if you haven't seen my video on Krzysztof Dyminski, I will link it right there as well. It's another case that raises questions about how we respond when someone is in trouble. Until next time, stay safe.